from the news from Australia. Um, Prime Minister uh, Anthony Albanese have been re-elected for the second term in office, and that makes him the first Prime Minister in Australia's history to be re-elected for a three-year term consecutively. So their system is it's a parliamentary system, of course. I think the king or the queen is still subservient to the monarch, so you have this quasi um, monarchical system still in place in Australia. Same with Canada. Although the parliament has a lot of power, and the prime minister will be elected to, not elected, the parliament will be elected, and a cabinet will be formed by the ruling coalition or the ruling political party. And it seems that the current prime minister, Anthony Albanese, will be the next prime minister if he's able to form a coalition to rule at the center. So he wanted to be Australia's PM, but the Trump effect thwarted. Peter Dutton is a liberal that people were touting to be the next prime minister. He lost his own seat. He couldn't even win his constituent, so he got kicked out. And yeah, of course, we have Anthony Albanese as well to contend with. So Peter Dutton is the main opposition, but lost his position. Well, having said that, we saw the incident yesterday in the David Ben Gurion International Airport in Israel. People tend to think that this is going to just be a cakewalk at the beginning, that Israel will take 3 weeks in Gaza, they are going to finish the H group and they are going to walk away, and that will be the end of H group, both in Lebanon and so on and so forth. We are seeing how this situation is beginning to metastasize, it's beginning to uh, degenerate into a bigger political problem. And the battleground, of course, is moving next to Syria, and who knows, maybe Israel will try to link up their hands with the Kurds in Rojava. So I held a live stream yesterday, and this guy came up and he was irate, he was very angry, and he said that the Arabs are only talking about the Kurds when it suits them, that they are not talking about what they are doing working with Israel. And I heard his point loud and clear. Some of you are working with Israel, but you're quick to call out another person and say, you are the Jesus. You are the one working with Israel, telling the Kurds. Well, do I support the idea that some of the Kurds feel that they have to work with the enemy of your enemy, that kind of stuff? Absolutely not. But the leaders of the most important countries in the Arab world continue to sell out the Palestinians for political gains. And this is what I've seen clearly. This is exactly what is happening. And anybody that thinks otherwise is either they are delusional or they're lying to themselves or are not economical with the truth. The reality on the ground is that Israel now today is bombing Damascus. The situation is worse than it is being reported because it's a big, big embarrassment that none of them are willing to talk about. These are the same people that supported the idea that were sharing and dancing from Ankara to all the way to Riyadh when Assad was removed, because the problem is not really Assad or with the government, it's with the sect. It's about sectarianism. It's a disdain for the Shia. It's a disdain for Iran. Well, the Saudis don't have a problem with the Russians having a base in Tartus and in Latakia. They had a problem with Iran being present there. So to them, it's about the geopolitical importance and balance that they are looking for in the Middle East. And I saw this same thing happen in Iraq. People talk, look, here's the thing, right? There are two sides of the debate. So it's easier for me as an outsider to make a lot of mistakes while I'm explaining this, and someone will say, well, you're wrong. But when you tell me I'm wrong, I need supporting evidence to this, right? Because it's exactly the same thing that was being played in Iraq during the removal of Saddam. And what happened during the removal of Saddam? There was a transitional council that was set up then, by the after Jay Ghana, there was the U.S. envoy to Iraq at that time set up the process of debathification. And who was placed in power? One of the champions of the Shia group or political elite in Iraq at that time, in Ahmad Shalabi. Chalabi was the one that was placed in charge of it. And after Chalabi, there was a transitional phase when you had Chegazi Aliawa uh, as president for a brief period of time. And then the election that happened that brought in a Kurdish leader called President Jalal Talabani. But the point I'm making here, or my argument is very simple, that this has always been a problem in the Middle East. This idea of divide and rule is very potent and effective. The Europeans continue to use it. The Europeans know very well that we can easily turn against each other. And it's not just in the Middle East, it's the same situation in Africa. Anytime the West rise up to the occasion, anytime the West decides to turn us against each other, it's easy for them. This is the system of divide and rule that they have entrenched within our communities and continue to do so. And I'm not saying that Africa is different, I'm just explaining it from my viewpoint and the way I see it. And the reality on the ground now is that Syria, I mean, there's some part of it that's still left. Because if you look at what Ahmed al Shara is doing, he's signing off Syrian sovereignty. So the agreement they're having with the Kurds is that giving them some level of autonomy and stripping away all the powers from Damascus. In his desperation to stay in power, he's accepting and acquiescing to every position. He's trying to find the right balance between serving his masters in Ankara and serving his other masters in Jerusalem. The reason, what I don't understand is why the hell are you guys not seeing it? Why in the hell are the Arabs not seeing what is going on? Is it because you have to support your own, or is it about sectarianism? Is it just about the hatred for the Shia? I really want to know the situation in Syria. Of course, this is a very sensitive topic, and somebody will come to my page and say, well, why the hell are you causing division at this point in time where Gaza is under duress, that Israel is bombarding Gaza, that Israel is trying to deploy 10,000 new personnel to join them in Gaza to complete this project of expulsion, because this is what it's about for the Israelis. And my position have been very categorical and clear, but there are a lot of cynicists and hypocrites. Okay, when people do things wrong and they are on your side, you should be, and few people are doing it. And I commend those of you that are doing it and putting your foot down and saying, if MBS, I mean, even in Israel, I know that some Hasidic people and some other people are protesting on behalf of Palestine and raising Palestinian flags, although the government is beating them up. But I don't know, maybe recently, because I'm not familiar with the laws of Israel or how it operates. But I don't know about laws even in places like America, in London. These are the people giving arms to Israel. I don't see there are laws in place to say you cannot hold the Palestinian flag or you cannot protest. But you're telling me that Saudi Arabia is allowing that to happen, that the Saudis are enabling that the Saudis are saying that you're not allowed to protest or demonstrate or stand in solidarity with Palestine in Saudi Arabia. This is madness. It is utter madness. And well, some people will say, oh, we don't want to talk about it. Who the hell is this guy from the outside? Look, I hear a lot of these things and I'm very comfortable with taking on difficult positions. I told you guys before, look, this has been always been my pursuit of knowledge and the truth in what I believe in what I truly believe in. And it's a predicament for me because a lot of people from my own constituency, or if you like, or from my own base, because I'm an African and I live in Africa, some of them see reason to what I'm saying. Majority of them are saying absolutely not. You don't care about your own people. You are just a slave to the Arabs. Look at what the Arabs did in Africa, 700 years of slavery. Look at what the Arabs are doing to Africans in Libya. This is what I hear every day. It's the biggest demography, or if I look at my algorithm, a lot of my followers are from Nigeria, from Ghana, and from Sierra Leone, and so on and so forth. And a lot of them, even though they are Muslims and some Christians, they have a common view on this stuff. There's a lot of Arabophobia within this, particularly in West Africa. Why? It's because of the relationship between the Africans that have gone to the Gulf and some of those countries and how they were treated, of the cases of throwing acid on people. And again, sometimes when I'm having this interaction and it comes up, the first thing I hear from the other side is denial, denial, denial. It doesn't happen. It's never happening. we live with our brothers and sisters. Some of us are black. It doesn't happen. There's absolutely no racism in the Middle East, which is very, very defensive position. And on the other hand, the moment I start talking about topics like this, you called an outsider, you're not from the region, you're just here for coins, you don't know anything about the topic. Even though I challenge a lot of them to have conversations with me about, look, I don't claim to be an expert on anything. But what I do is I try to figure out and connect the dots in the patterns of behavior and attitude, and particularly political attitudes in the region. And if any of you is not seeing the behavior of the United States and Israel in the Middle East, how best can I help you? I've had situations where Middle Easterners, especially those of them in diaspora, and I can mention names, have called me an anti-Semite, that I'm not here and I'm putting the cause in this report, or how do you say it in English? And yeah, I get that a lot. And the funny thing is that the people that you are giving a free hand, they don't care. When these guys come up, see what the way they talk about Arabs and Muslims and blacks, they don't care. To them, the gloves are off. And to you, you want to maintain the friendship and the contacts you have made during the course of this period. A lot of you have made a lot of contacts with some of them, going in each other's DM and dating each other and so on and so forth. And I can understand why you're trying to give them a leeway. You can call me a radical if you want. I have my views particularly about the United States, and I espouse them. I talk about it. Why should I care about offending Americans? Why should I give a shit about offending Israelis and Arabs? Particularly like the Emiratis and the Saudis that are bombing and destroying Africa. Why on earth should I be afraid of speaking about anybody that is committing atrocities? Anybody that thinks, as we speak in Sudan today, in Port Sudan, the RSF have received new shipments from the Emiratis. And let's not forget that the Saudis are also on board with the violence and the chaos happening around the region, including in Eritrea. These are the people also creating issues on the coast or on the banks of the Red Sea. So most of those countries there, because the Saudis are, they have the longest coastline on the Red Sea, and they have brought in a lot of outsiders to influence politics in the region, particularly their relationship with the United States. How many of you can tell me comfortably how many military outposts that America, or airfields or whatever you want to call it, that America have in Saudi Arabia? And why the Saudi leadership is okay with that? And why the Saudis are helping the Israelis to refuel over their airspace to go and bomb Yemen? And why Mohammed bin Salman and the Saudis took out over 500,000 Yemenis? It's the Saudis that did that. 500,000 plus Yemenis exterminated by the Saudis. How many of you have the energy to talk about that? Well, it seems that the Yemenis are Zaydis and they are not Sunnis. So it's not really your business, is it? Is it really your business? Why can't we unite? And this, by the way, this is not just about the Middle East or the Gulf, it's also about Africa. We have leaders in Africa turning against each other. For instance, the Nigerian president, Bola Tinubu, and I'll give you the instance so you understand. I speak with a free mind. I'm not afraid, I'm not sensitive and emotional about these topics. And people get easily offended when you point at them and say, you are helping the Zionists. When you point at them, they don't want to hear it. Because how dare you offend them? How dare you offend people? How dare you put things straight and say, this is wrong and should not happen? When you say that, of course, you are deemed an enemy and spewing Zionist talking points. It reminds me of Ukraine. The U.S. ambassador or the U.S. special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, was given an assignment to go to Moscow to mediate between Moscow and Washington, D.C., to find a resolution to the problem and find the right balance in terms of having the ceasefire. And what did the Ukrainians say? The Ukrainians said that this was Russian propaganda and talking point. Well, while America is giving them arms and support, they wave the Americans off with one hand and say, you guys are regurgitating and repeating Russian propaganda. So people will see with you or agree with you up until the point of consonance. But the moment there is a shift, the moment there's a schism in terms of your ideas and views and position, welcome, Appel, and positions, of course, they'll call you a Zionist. They'll call you, oh, they'll say all sorts of things. How come you're spewing Zionist talking points? When I'm telling you that Syria today, what is happening in Syria, we saw it coming, we spoke about it, but a lot of you sided with them, not on logical basis, but because you were of a particular sect that is opposed to the Alawis and the Sunnis and the Zaydis in Yemen and Iran. You were happy to see the Iranians go. Um, you were happy to see the Iranians go and uh, and be replaced by whatever, replaced by the Saudis and the people that are of your own kin and of your own clan and people of your own background and so on and so forth. So is this about logic? What have Damascus achieved today? They have lost close to, I would say, between 7 to 10% of their land, maybe a little less, since Ahmed al-Shara or Abu Muhammad al-Jolani came to power. And who the hell is Jolani? We have no idea. Well, why is he being supported and given this oxygen to continue? Well, because he looks like you, he's of the same kin, he's of the same creed. This is what it has always been about. And what is the solution to the problem? I mean, he's not in a position to fight Israel. This is what I don't understand as well. People are saying, oh, well, we can't fight the Israelis right now because we are undergoing a process. When we get strong again, we will challenge Israel to try to get back the Golan Heights and Mount Hermon and the areas and territories around the Lake Tiberias, or what they call the Sea of Galilee. Most of the areas that Israelis control on the other side of the Sea of Galilee belongs to Syria. Assad was not able to take it back, but the Assad and the government of Hafez and even Salah Jadid before him held a political position. It was difficult after the 6 Day War in 67 and the Yom Kippur in 73, but they had a political position. There was an impasse. The international community refused to recognize Syrian occupied, they call it the Syrian occupied Golan Heights. Now, I mean, who the hell will challenge the Israelis right now that you guys have given them the free hand? You accepted support from the devil, accepted support from them, encouraged them to remove Assad. And I'm not making an argument for one day that Assad ought to have remained in power. Whatever you believe Assad is doing in Syria, the crown in Kuwait is doing it. Why is it okay for the leadership in Kuwait, the monarchy in Kuwait, to remain in power and to target the majority Shia, but Assad, who's from the minority Alawite? By the way, the Alawites were not even seen as, at the beginning, they were not even seen as Shia. It was a fatwa by a guy called Musa al-Sada that made them Shia in 1976, if I'm not mistaken, 76 or 1975. And I'm sure some of you know the story of Imam Musa al-Sada, who um, who disappeared in Libya, uh, during his visit to Libya, I think 81 or 82. He's the founder of one of the founders of Amal movement. And it was from Amal that Hezbollah was founded from by um, Abbas al-Musawi. Abbas al-Musawi was also a member of the what they call the movement of the dispossessed, called Amal. Amal is a political party and a political group today, is still in parliament in Lebanon. And they always tend to form coalition with the other groups, in the south of Lebanon and the south of Beirut to stay in the center. By the way, I'm going to give you guys a few updates as well about the situation with the David Ben Gurion airport yesterday that happened in Tel Aviv. And Israel Security Cabinet approves plan to capture Gaza. Now let's look at the updates. This was from 4 hours ago. Israel Security Cabinet have approved the plan to expand its military offensive against the H group. I'm going to share this in a second. Mm, yes. Somebody saying, just like I said earlier, somebody is saying, let the Arab deal with their own issue and mind their own business. Well, exactly. I just said that before you came in, I said that already. It's a predicament for me, but I don't owe anybody anything in terms of what I'm supposed to say and what I'm not supposed to say. I can talk about any topic that I see fit. Right? This is my area. This is where I love to learn about and to know more about and export that to understanding conflicts around the world. And I talk more about Africa than probably those of you trolling. I do. I talk about Africa and I do a lot. Okay. And there are a lot of people look for different areas. You need to understand that God have created a lot of people around the world, over 8 billion people, and different people are doing different things. There are some people that are cobblers, some are aeronautic engineers, some of them are medical doctors and pastors and imams, people of different occupation and trade. I've decided to talk about international politics. And if you want to understand international politics, you move from region to region, embed yourself in that region, stay as for as long as possible to try to understand the events. Follow the events as they go along, talk about it, educate yourself, and try to educate others while learning. So when I talk about the situation in Western Asia and in the Western Asian corridor, I'm also talking about Africa, but because this is very important to Africa. So I want you guys to understand that, okay? So before you criticize me or what I do, and I'm so sick of people coming up and trying to tell me what to do. Look, it's very easy. You can just start up a live stream and talk about topics that are of utmost importance to you. Okay? Easy. How do I start up a stream and talk about topics and issues that matter to me? It's easy. You talk about that. I can decide to talk about the Irish and the French. And if you take a look at my content, there's a rough balance between the contents I post about Africa. One of my trending videos right now is about the role of the French in Africa, and a video from the French President Emmanuel Macron in 2017 mocking Burkina Faso. Now, I need to understand the psychology and the mindset of these people also in Africa by understanding how they have operated in other theaters. Western Asia, Asian Pacific, their relations with China, their relations in Central Asia, the role of Turkey as a transcontinental country. This is the way I think. You want me to talk about food. You come and say, stop what you're doing right now and start talking about food. People come and say, stop right now and talk about what matters to me. Meaning you saying, shut the hell up and talk about what I want. And others will say, why the hell are you talking about us? Shut the hell up and go back to Africa. Go back to your trees and play with your elephants. No, 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 fair. It's a fair point. I don't think you mean anything. I don't think you mean anything sinister or you mean any harm. But the reason why I'm responding is because this is what I get every time, right? I get this all the time. People come and say, why don't you shut up and just talk about Nigeria? At the point I was focusing on Africa, I was going around, I traveled to the Sahel, and a lot of Nigerians were saying, how is this your business? Why don't you deal with the issue between the Fulanis and the Hausas and the other tribes in Benue State and in Kogi State? That was the response I was getting. So anything you talk about, people are always going to have a problem with that, which is fine. It's fair. But don't for a second any of you think that you can decide the direction I'm going to go to and what I'm supposed to do. No, no. Even those in the Middle East, I told them already, don't come up to me with any list. Don't tell me what to do because no matter what I do, some of you are not going to accept me. So it's fine. I can live with that and I know my place. I know I know, what I have and I know what God have done for me. And I'm not in competition with anybody. I just have my own views. And I'm not the most educated. I'm a rough stone. I'm not the most polished or educated. I'm just a simple guy that lives on the farm. I don't, so nothing, I'm not phased by anything. I'm not in a drive, I'm in a rush to be accepted or to be loved. I keep saying that. And this is the way my heart has been built. Some will say it has reached the point of desensitization that when somebody calls me a name or whatever, I don't even try to defend myself. Sometimes when somebody says something about me and I try to defend myself, I leave feeling worse off than ignoring it. Anyways, let's go back to the conversation about the situation. So Israel's security cabinet has approved the plan to expand its military offensive against the H group, which includes the capture of Gaza and holding of its territory. Meaning, initially they wanted to annex the northern part of Gaza, which is Gaza City and beyond. Now they're talking about Deir Bala, they're talking about Khan Yunis, they're talking about Rafah, the entirety of Gaza. Israel wants to maintain permanent military presence in the Gaza Strip. That is what they want to do. And so Israel's security cabinet, like I said, it also said to include moving 2.1 million Palestinians in Gaza towards the south, which could worsen the humanitarian situation. Oh my God. I wish I could show you guys the map. And for those of you following me on Facebook and YouTube, since I'm broadcasting from a different platform, I will show you guys the map so you can see. So you can see the real situation. And by the way, for those of you that have not followed me yet, um, my Facebook page, I don't know whether I'm allowed to even talk about it here because I don't think TikTok allows that. But anyway, it's Savak, and you can check on some of my videos. I put it on so you can. The same name here on Facebook is Geopolitical Hawk, and on YouTube is Savak Media X. I'm on X as well, and very soon I'll start broadcasting on X. Because yeah, it's another place you can do your broadcast. But I love being here because it's easy. TikTok is a very good platform that you can use, and it's easily accessible. It's the Thank you so much, guys, for the likes. A bit of news from the United States as well. I'm going to give you guys a bit of information and news happening in America. So, how many of you know about the Alcatraz prison in, I think, off the coast of San Francisco Bay, right? So, and we were talking about Alcatraz recently. So, the US president wants to reopen Alcatraz. He wants to modernize it and upgrade it. The reason for this, I have no idea. But could this be connected to the visit of the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, which Trump loved so much, adored, and spoke highly about him, of him building this state-of-the-art prison in San Salvador, I think, which is the capital of El Salvador, and basically encouraging America to do exactly the same thing, pick up people and lock them up in prison judicial uh, without judicial due process, if you like. So this is what he's saying. He wants that to happen in America. So that is one of the updates from the United States. Um, so I'm also going to look at another update from America those of you from the United States, and I'm going to. And by the way, for those of you from Australia, I hope we can have this conversation later on. Maybe I would invite a guy calls himself, I don't know, he calls himself Theodore Herzl. That's what he calls himself. To talk a bit about, and maybe Appel and a few other people. If you guys want to talk about the fact that Albanese got re-elected after the whole stuff that was said about him and his support for Israel and so on and so forth, how the hell did he get re-elected to become the first prime minister in Australian history to win election consecutively on two occasions consecutively, if I'm not mistaken? So you have a 3-year term. And I don't think look, it's not about him winning election to become prime minister, but he's the leader of the biggest party in parliament, so he'll be able to form a government. Whether or not he'll be able to put up the right coalition to do so is yet to be seen, but it's very likely that he'll be the next prime minister. So um, yeah, we will talk about that. So another update from Russia. Russia reports Ukrainian drone attack on Moscow ahead of May 5th event. The attack comes as Moscow prepares to welcome foreign leaders from China and Brazil, among others. So, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? So, Ukraine is telling world leaders from around the world that are going to participate in what they call in the Victory Day parade, which is a commemoration of Russian victory during the First World War, the day they reached Berlin. They destroyed the Germans and the German columns and marched all the way to Berlin. And the fact that Ukraine is making a direct threat to world leaders, telling them not to go to Moscow, that them, meaning Ukraine, cannot guarantee their security. Think about it, right? Putting itself in a very difficult position. What if the Ukrainians follow through? By the way, this is the leadership of Ukraine telling the governments around the world not to go there. Of course, they are going to go there. And if they go there, and God forbid, a drone attack during the parade that hits one of the world leaders, and how that helps Ukraine. How is it going to help Ukraine? The Russians will rain hellfire and it will completely change the balance. The Russians will not go to Moscow and kill foreign leaders, for instance. They will not go there. So if they do that, if they just think about Ukraine doing that and the consequence. So Russia has reported that it repelled a drone attack on Moscow as the capital city prepares to host major military parades with foreign leaders in attendance. Russia's air defense system intercepted four drones flying towards Moscow. Mayor Sergei Sobyanin says on Monday the attack appears intended to unsettle Moscow's preparation for events marking the end of the Great Patriotic War, commonly known as the World War II, elsewhere on May 9th. So on May 9th, the event is going to happen. President Vladimir Putin has called the 72-hour ceasefire to mark the occasion starting on May 8th. However, Ukraine has demanded instead a 30-day truce aimed at agreeing to a permanent ceasefire in the conflict that began with Russia when Russia invaded in February of 2022. So it's been 4 years already, 3, 4 years, since this military operation started. And in a long drawn out war of attrition, eventually, eventually, Ukraine is going to find it difficult to sustain this kind of long drawn out war of attrition. If you're just joining, you're welcome. So that is another side of the news that I wanted you guys to see. Let's look at other events happening around the world. Ukraine will not win that war. Exactly, it's a long drawn out war of attrition. And how in the hell do you guys think that Ukraine is going to win? Um, and I've talked about what the Israeli Knesset, granting. Report says Israel now eyeing occupation of the entire enclave, control of aid, and possible expulsion of Palestinians. Israel's political and military leaders have approved plans to expand the Gaza offensive and take over aid deliveries to the devastated and starving enclave. According to reports, Prime Minister Netanyahu's security cabinet unanimously approved plans to call up reservists and to put Israel military in charge of food and other vital supplies to the 2.3 million people suffering under this blockade of the Palestinian territory. Um, Newswires reported unnamed Israeli officials suggesting that the plans include the conquest and occupation of the entirety of the Gaza Strip. Well. I don't know how long this will continue, but I hope that this nightmare comes to an end. I hope that this comes to an end very soon. By the way, in Africa, I talked about the video from Emmanuel Macron recently, where he was saying that the people of Burkina Faso should hold their leaders accountable. That is not the role of France, or the that is not the responsibility of France to take care of their education and particularly energy. By the way, we're talking about Burkina Faso, a country that the French have continued to, pillage, leading up to, I think, last year or about 2 years ago, when Ibrahim Traore said, "Absolutely not. This has to end." And the youngest leader in Africa is the one doing the most. And a lot of these guys don't like him. Why? We know why, because the West wants to continue to control. And anytime I talk about the West, people don't understand. This is why I see the behavior of Israel and I see the attitude of Israel, and I see that as well in the West, because this is the way they communicate. They will tell you that they are the ones that are civilized, they are democratic, and that they are advanced and so on and so forth. And the rest of us are in the dark ages, and therefore they must come to bomb, to democratize, and to civilize. This is the same argument that Israelis and the British and the Americans are making. This is the argument. When you talk about the collective West and the attitude, it's not different from the behavior of one country, in the Middle East today. This is exactly what they're saying. They believe that the Iranians are in the dark ages and only Israel is civilized and democratic. This is what the Americans and the Europeans continue to tell us. How come till today you have France controlling a large chunk of the resources from the S12 or the Francophone countries, if you like? Of course, some of them are breaking off and saying enough is enough with this your hegemonistic ambition in the Sahel. There was an interview with the U.S. Head of AFRICOM, General Langley, who said that America have heavy presence in Africa and that they are carrying out most of their military drills and expedition and training of some officers in some of these African countries that they're training in the Gulf of Guinea. By the way, I'm sure you guys know about the Gulf of Guinea. So the Gulf of Guinea is on the coast of West Africa. Nigeria, Ghana, uh, Togo, Benin, Guinea, Senegal, and the Gambia are those countries on the coast of the Gulf of Guinea, all the way down, I think, including Cameroon. So this, and by the way, let's not forget that when the Sahelian countries started kicking out the Europeans from the Sahel, particularly France, there was a there was uh, there was a law in the I think in the law or an edit in the British, not in the British, in the European Parliament that called for an investment of about 100 billion or 80 billion or thereabout to mobilize to Africa, particularly the Gulf of Guinea. So the Europeans are in unison. They have agreed that they want to send in their contingent. Either they are coming as independently as different countries or as the European Union to the Gulf of Guinea. Let's not forget that Gabon is also very strategic and important to the French. So when the military coup happened in Gabon, they removed Ali Bongo from power, the son of the erstwhile president Omar Bongo. We saw it was a complete facade. It was a sham. Who carried out that coup in Gabon? It was the French. Removed Ali Bongo because he was weak. At that point, he was ill. He wanted to contest again, and they sent in his cousin or his whatever to remove him from power and maintain the rule of the dynasty. The French did it. So this is the game these guys are playing in Africa, and I'm not surprised they will continue to do so. Welcome, Yazan. So that is exactly what they are doing in Africa, and I hope that at some point we in Africa need to rise up and wake up and say enough is enough. So basically, I want to talk about the incident that happened yesterday in the conversation we had about Syria, and this guy called I think Kurdish doctor came up, spoke eloquently. I didn't have a problem with some of the things he said because they're factual, but it was difficult to have a real conversation when the energy levels are very high, and I've never been against people taking a stance and talking about their position in relations to certain issues. The only thing I always call for is decorum and restraint and speak and let others speak, so that when you have this dialogue and conversation with people, you can be on opposing side and still have a conversation and have an argument and a debate about certain topics that you will never see eye to eye on. Yeah, but if the tempers go up and it becomes a lot of cursing and abusing, it's very difficult to have any conversation. And what's going on in Burkina Faso? Yeah, I talked about that as well. I've been talking about Burkina Faso, but if you want to listen more to my conversation about Burkina Faso, just stick around, okay? McLovin, welcome. So I'm going to open the box for those of you that want to request and join. You're more than welcome to do so.